to Escaping the Chains podcast. I am your host, John Humphreys. We are in the studio with Delivered Media. We have our friend RJ. He's the man behind the curtain. You can't see him, but he does have a mic. Do you got a mic today, RJ?
Oh, yeah. What's up, man?
There we go. RJ is in the house. Go check out Delivered Media for any of your podcast needs, and they also do sound and video setups for churches, so check them out. We would also like to thank Los Amores today. Those are our people. They're in the Boston Hill Center. Wonderful Mexican food. Anything steak, rice, and cheese, steak quesadillas. Go check them out. They're in the Boston Hill Center, Los Amores, downtown Marion. So we're glad to have you all here. If you haven't had a chance yet, we would love for you to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast. Give us a follow, subscribe, and on Spotify and Apple, you can actually give us a 5-star review. We would appreciate that, and share it with a friend. That's what kind of keeps us going and gives us momentum. So we appreciate all your support, and grab a friend and have them subscribe too. So we are here today with our friend from the Auburn area. Yes?
Yes.
That's north of Fort Wayne, kind of?
Yes.
North of Fort Wayne. Marissa, would you like to, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell everybody what you're doing nowadays and what your titles are and all of that fun stuff, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Okay, so my name's Marissa Mckenzie, and I am the Executive Director of Hearten House Rescue Mission in Auburn, Indiana. And we serve women who are struggling with substance abuse, domestic abuse, unhealed trauma, homelessness, all the above.
So all of that.
All of that.
So it's not just a traditional, like, transitional house like we would think for addiction.
Yes, but 99% of our women have a substance abuse disorder, so.
So what is it you do? It's faith-based?
It's very Christ-centered.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So what is it you do there? What's it like there?
Awesome.
Yeah, of course.
So we basically, we meet women right where they're at. If you need a safe place to come, and they're willing to go through, it's a pretty intensive, structured program. So if they're willing to commit the next 9 months in our program, and then another 3 to 6 months in our aftercare program, and they're willing to follow the rules and they qualify, then they can, come to our program, and while they're with us, we help them start overcoming what brought them to us. And we teach them about recovery. We get them set up with our collaborating agencies that offer mental health services and assessments. And most importantly, we lead them to Christ.
How would somebody get in contact with you all if they were interested in helping out in some way, or interested in helping somebody, or somebody that is looking for a place that is like this?
They can call us or email us.
Where would they email you?
My email address is m.mckenzie@heartenhouse.org.
m.mckenzie?
Yep. And you can go to our website, heartenhouse.org.
Heartenhouse.org, and they have a Facebook page too.
Yes.
So you can probably send messages on there?
Yes.
Will you respond? Okay, Let's dig into it. So let's figure out how you go from how you end up in the world of recovery, because a lot of us have a little bit of a path to get there. So we've had some conversations, kind of connected and talked about this a little bit and what direction we might go. So what I would like for you to tell us a little bit about, like, your childhood or your youth, and some of the things that ended up landing you in the world of substance use or substance misuse, whatever everybody's calling it nowadays.
So both of my biological parents were addicts, and they had me very young. And so my stepfather, who's actually who I consider to be my real father, he entered the scene when I was about 2. But so growing up, I had a lot of conflict. My stepfather offered me, a safe home and a structured environment. But then when I would spend time with my biological father, there was it was the opposite.
Chaos.
Danger. I mean, he's not a good person.
Yeah.
And so my mom was able to hide her addiction a lot, but I knew about it. And so just, it wasn't really until I turned about 15, where I just had no respect for both of my biological parents, but I still loved them and I wanted them to love me. And so I remember when my stepdad and my mom were getting a divorce, it just spiraled. Our home life spiraled. My mom.
That had to be tough, right? Because he was like your
It was very tough.
safe person, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very tough. And so my mom just spun out of control. She was just with different guys that really had, it was just chaos, basically. And I remember she kicked me out when I was 15 and moved one of my friends in from high school, a guy that she was with. And I was replaced with some guy at school, and everyone in my school knew about it, and I was mortified. And then after that, she got in a very toxic relationship, and their drug use together was just really bad, and I knew it. And then one day she just killed him.
So she killed him.
Yes.
Well, tell us about that.
So it happened at the house that I grew up in, and I was the first one on the scene. And I'll never forget, like, pulling up to the house I grew up in. It was like this normal suburban house, and it was taped off. The police had it taped off, and I was just watching like forensics go in and out, and there was just blood all over the yard, and I saw her boyfriend's clothes that were cut off in the yard, and I knew something horrific had just happened. I saw one of his shoes, and I just remember sitting there, and I was in complete shock, but I didn't know it. And an hour before that, my stepdad got into a really bad motorcycle accident and was on life support. He lost his leg, was in life support, and this just happened an hour apart. And I remember sitting on the curb, and I was like, shouldn't I be crying or shouldn't I be upset? And I just couldn't. I didn't understand what was happening to me. I just remember sitting there and wishing that someone would come sit with me.
Did they have anybody sit with you or talk to you or anything?
No.
So they were just cleaning up the scene. Did you see?
No, they didn't clean it up. They were doing their investigation. They only came over to talk to me, to ask me questions about my mom.
Yeah.
But nobody came to sit with me to help me process it,
Yeah.
And none of my family came to sit with me. And I just felt so unloved.
Yeah.
Like nobody loved me enough to come just talk to me.
Yeah. How old were you when that happened?
I was just turning into an adult. I was around 18 years old.
So you were just sitting out there by yourself. Did you see your mom, or what were they doing with her?
They had already taken her in by the time I got there.
So she wasn't there.
No.
So you just were there in this like mess. And had just gotten that bad news, and you're just sitting on the curb, like,
right,
getting questioned, and then just sitting there.
Yeah, my dad's fighting for his life. I didn't know that if he would make it or not. I was in such shock that I really honestly thought my mom was coming home. It really didn't hit me yet.
Yeah.
That was like how do you process something that's just of that magnitude by yourself, and you don't know. You don't have the right tools. You don't have any wisdom yet in life, to really learn what was going on.
So you sat there, and nobody came to console you or anything like that.
No.
What did the rest of the day play out like? Like, how long were they doing their investigation, and what was all that like?
Well, it seemed like they were there for days. I honestly cannot tell you how long they were there for, because I just was in such shock. I had no sense of time at that point. But I will, when they left, I'll never forget, the officer was like, so we're we're getting ready to leave, and I'm like, wait, but who cleans up this blood, And they were like, oh, we don't clean this up. It's private property. And so I just remember, like, I was in such shock that I was like, okay, I'm going to move into my mom's house and take care of it until she gets out of jail. Mm-hmm. And I literally stepped over this murder scene. The blood, she shot him from the inside of the house, and he was on the porch. So you had to step over it to get into the house. Mm. And, like, there was bullet holes in the screen door. And I went in there, and I just was sitting there and covered in blood, and it was just like, I can't believe I have to clean this up.
Yeah. So you stayed there?
I stayed there.
For how long? And you had to clean all that up? Yes.
And it took me 3 days to get the courage to clean it up. And at that point, because this was in California, so the sun was, it was hot. It's hot. The sun was was drying the blood up. But I cleaned it up, and I couldn't even cry. And I thought to myself, what is wrong with me? Because I was so devastated, but I didn't understand literally what was happening to me physiologically, and I went into full survival mode.
Yeah.
Like, do what you got to do.
What was going on with your stepdad at that time? Were you getting any information?
Yeah, he was in a coma for, I really can't say how long, because I, again, didn't have really a good understanding of where I was in space and time at that moment, because it was just so overwhelming to me. But he was on life support and in the hospital for quite a while. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a really bad, tragic accident, and he lost his leg all the way up to here, and so he was fighting for his life for a while. But I just remember being at my mom's house, and my entire family, like my extended family, blamed me for what happened. And I carried that with me for a long, long time.
How did they blame you exactly?
So, when I turned about 15, I started telling my mom how I felt and standing up for myself and calling her out on her stuff. And she didn't like that. And everybody just decided that I was this bad kid.
Yeah. So you were going through this alone, and instead of having people like check on you, even make an attempt to comfort you, they blamed you.
Yes. So I felt completely shunned, which is why nobody came and sat with me. But it was about a week into, I think, it was roughly, I'm guessing, the lawn was high. I couldn't do anything. I just was so broken at that point and just beat down. And my biological dad's brother showed up. And it was under the pretense that he was going to come help me. And at that point, I had my baby with me. I had just had a baby. I followed in my parents' footprints when I look back.
So you had a baby when you were going through all this too?
Yes. And so he came over and said that he was going to help me. And I just remember feeling so relieved that someone loved me.
Yeah.
And really, he was just there to scope out the house, and he returned later that night when I was in bed, and I was sleeping in my mom's bed with my son, and he broke into the house, and I woke up with a man on top of me, raping me. And I thought I was going to die. I was like, I am about to get killed in front of my son. And so I decided to stop fighting so that my son wouldn't witness all this and wake up, Yeah. And that actually ended up, he stopped after that. And I just remember running down the street with my clothes ripped off of me, holding my baby, and nobody would answer their door because I was like it was scary. It was the middle of the night,
Yeah.
And I didn't have any Christians in my life.
Yeah.
I didn't really know any. But I remember realizing no one's going to open the door for me because I was the murderer's daughter anyway. So I was already looked down upon. And so I ran like a block away to these people. I didn't know them, but I knew they were Christians. And they opened the door for me and they covered me up and they tried to get me to call the police, but I was way too scared for my life. And I was like, no, because I just really didn't have any safe place to go. So I basically let it happen without holding anybody accountable because I just was too broken at the time to deal with that.
So you thought, you thought somebody was coming over to like look out for you, and it ended that way. And then you run down the street and nobody will even open the door for you.
Yeah.
That's wild. How do you, I guess I can kind of see, but what kind of impact did that have on you, like in your adult life? Because you're just entering your adult life, and that's like a series of events that's a lot.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot. My biological dad introduced me to dope when I was 12, and he always told me, you're going to be a drug addict. We all are, and I smoked crack with my mom. I did meth with my dad. It was just, they weren't really parents to me. But what I did at that point after all this happened was I turned to what I knew would numb my pain, and that was meth. So for the 4 years following that, I do not remember 4 years of my life. I just completely stayed high all the time. And during my mom's trial, she tried to use the battered women's syndrome as her defense. And when that was, they didn't accept that. And so she said in her defense trial that her daughter caused her a lot of stress and was unruly and difficult, and it led her to kill someone.
Jeez.
So I carried that with me for a long time. And really, honestly, it took me a long time to start unpacking any of this because, I intentionally was like, I'm not going to stay clean ever. Like, I'm going to get high because I can't deal with this.
But everybody that was supposed to look out for you, like, they didn't just do you wrong.
Yes.
Like, the level that's like so deep of a betrayal from all of these different directions.
Yes.
And even the people that just weren't there for you that were supposed to be there for you.
And, my stepdad, who's my real father, I don't refer to him as my stepdad. I'm just referring to him in this interview so it's understandable, so it's relatable. Yeah. But he would have probably went to prison if he wasn't in, he definitely would have done something about what had happened to me. And as a matter of fact, he testified against my mom in her murder trial. But, when you have so much internal conflict like I had, to me, I found it to be like I didn't want my mom to go to prison. I didn't want anybody to testify against her. I wanted to protect my mom because that's just what I always did.
So, like, one of the things for the people listening, like, when you hear a story like this, you can say it's been a while and everything like that, but we encounter people constantly that are going through things, and the way that we respond to them can have such an impact on their future. So we do a lot of speaking with youth and young adults, and you never know, like, what their home life is like. And like, this is a lot, but there are kids that are going through these types of things, and sometimes we just, get busy with life. But as the kingdom and the body, it is like our responsibility to take interest in people's lives enough if they're around us to see, to feel and use our discernment if they are struggling or hurting. Because one person, the thing is, in a story like this, and we'll continue in a second, the one person that would have been there was in a coma, but one person reaching out, showing love and showing interest and concern. She wasn't asking, she didn't even need somebody to throw a party for her on her birthday or anything like that. She was needed somebody to sit with her. And sometimes it's like that. It's that simple. That's heartbreaking to think of an almost 18-year-old sitting on a curb. The only thing, and we overcomplicate this, is people like, how do I deal with a youth that's struggling? Sometimes just sit there. Mm-hmm. Sometimes just show interest in their life. Figure out the things that they like to do and connect with them, because one person in that neighborhood, one person on that force, one person could have been like, she's sitting there by herself, having gone through this. We could have sat there and maybe, just maybe, change the trajectory of a lot of that pain and stuff, because we overcomplicate it and we're like, oh, we've got to, if I can get you connected to this resource or that resource. Sometimes you're the resource, people. Sometimes you're that resource, and sometimes it's just sitting down, standing up, taking to lunch, showing a little bit of interest in somebody's life. But when you see somebody going, they're going through something, you have a couple of choices, and I've seen people do both. You can say, they're just a bad, troubled kid, and you stay away from them. I don't believe that there's necessarily bad kids, because I've operated with a lot of them. There's kids that have different needs than other kids. So I wasn't trying to go off on a tangent here, but in the kingdom, we have a responsibility sometimes to sit with those that are hurting and broken. And time nowadays seems to be so expensive, like people would rather throw money at you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They'd rather be like, oh, well, if we'll get her a hotel room. Sometimes what people need is for you to be present, sit down, maybe not even talk, but just be there. So as you hear this, it's heartbreaking, but I also promise you that there are youth around you. There's young adults around you, 18, 19, 20, younger, older, that are going through things that may just need one person. So now we'll continue with the story.
I agree with you.
But don't you think, like, one person, 4 years, not just that, excited because your uncle was coming over. Like, one person, I'm not saying one person could have changed these things from happening, but one person connecting with you and showing interest could have had a huge impact on the rest of your story, which 4 years of numbness and... Yes,
let's sit down and just, make me feel like a human that's valuable, mm-hmm. that is worth your time.
That's a wild concept, isn't it?
Yeah. And actually, I look back and, I don't even know who the people, I don't know their name, the people that opened the door for me. Mm-hmm. But they played a big part in when I was trying to search. They played a big part in me becoming a Christian, because I'll never forget, they were willing to open the door for someone in the middle of the night that was screaming. I mean, it was like a scary movie for me. I kept thinking he was going to pop out, and get me. And it's dark, and I'm petrified, and my clothes are not on, and I have my baby, and nobody would answer the door for me, and they did. And that is something that I will forever be grateful for.
So... So you said you had about 4 years where you were numb and don't remember much. What kind of happened after that time, that period?
So I just was off the rails for 4 years, had a really bad meth addiction. And I woke up one day in the hospital. I had bled to death. I was revived several times. And I was homeless. I didn't have any insurance. So, like, the ambulance, the hospitals kept rejecting me. I know they're not supposed to, but it happens. And that was just one more thing. I was like, man, I just must be completely worthless. Like, nobody even wants to help save my life, you know?
Yeah.
And the ambulance, the paramedic told me, because I guess I don't remember anything that happened because I had pretty much bled out. But when he was putting me in the ambulance, I apparently came to and said, I have a son and I need you to help me, you know? So when I woke up in the hospital and no one was there. And I just remember thinking, I've got to do something. Like, I don't belong here anymore. I just don't belong here anymore. And I just want to get clean, you know? And so I literally got in a 1956 Chevy truck it didn't have any windows except for the windshield. It didn't have any plates because in California you have to get smog check to get your car registered. So I didn't have any insurance, and I literally just started driving, and it broke down in Indiana, and that's how I became a Hoosier.
So you just took off and ended up here.
Yeah, I did a big dope deal so that I had enough. You know, you can't come down when you're driving across the country. Right. It's not the right time.
Yeah. You won't get very far.
No. And so, and I had to figure out, like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to, you know, get some money so that I can take care of myself because I knew I'd be coming down for a while. Yeah. And so I rented a hotel for 6 months and had terrible withdrawals by myself. And that's how I ended up here.
So what happened after that? So now you're in Indiana. Where at in Indiana did your truck break down?
Jeffersonville, Indiana.
Jeffersonville.
I putted across the bridge from Louisville, Kentucky. And actually, I stopped in Louisville, Kentucky, and the guy was like, "Look, I'm going to do you a solid. If you're trying to get a place for 6 months, you should go across the river to Indiana because it's a lot cheaper there." And so I was there for a while. I didn't tell anybody where I went except for both of my grandparents, both of my grandmas at the time, they were alive. And I just really wanted to escape. My biological father was just so, like, I had told him what his brother did to me, and he laughed and was like, "Well, what do you want me to do about it?" And then that's when he told me he was over at his house, and I didn't even see it at the time, but like I learned later that they were in cahoots. They're both predators, and that's what they do. And so, but I just was, I don't know, I was really, really gullible. I didn't see the worst in humanity yet. I didn't believe it, you know? So I just couldn't understand it. But one day I'm minding my own business. I'm doing really good. I had a job and an apartment. I'd been clean for a couple years. And I get a knock on the door, and it's my biological dad. And it was Christmas time, and he had a big ball of dope, like this big, in a baggie with the little bow on it, and put it right in my face. And I did it.
Why did he come here?
Because he never had anything for himself, so he likes to sponge off people, and it wasn't to be my dad, I can tell you that. Yeah. But of course I let him move in with me. I really wish I would have known then what I know now, but you know, my mom ended up getting sentenced to life. And there was just this really big part of me that believed I needed my dad in my life. And he ended up getting me evicted. He was having meth shipped from California to Indiana. And he was making me go in to the post office and pick it up like pounds. Okay. And this is before meth was really entered the scene here. And so, they would be like, this smells weird, but nobody really knew yet what it was. And I mean, I made the choice because at that point I was an adult, but honestly, I was just so broken at that time. And I just wanted to be loved. And so I ended up marrying one of his clients, a guy that got dope from him. And we had kids together. And when I remember when I found out I was pregnant, I was like, okay, I was clean, but I was still like fiending for dope. It was like, I wasn't set free from it yet, know? And, you can only do that for so long before you start using again. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I need to think about what is going to keep me from using. Like, I feel like I've tried everything. And my husband at the time's grandparents were devout Christians. And I remember meeting them and, when they found out my last name, they were like, oh, But I remember thinking, I don't know what it is, but they have something I want.
Yeah.
There's something so peaceful here that I just desperately want. And so I called them one night when my husband was at work, and I was like, hey, I don't even know if I'm allowed to go to church. Like, I don't know if I'll get kicked out or like if there like some kind of interview you have to do. But can I go to church with you sometime? Because I was like, I haven't tried that,
Yeah.
And it was in the country. They were having us it was like a revival week. Okay. So I went to church every night, and the last night I went forward and gave my heart to Christ. And I came home and I was just like, I just found what I've been searching for. I just found it. I just discovered it. And my husband was not happy. He was like, I married a party girl. I didn't marry a Christian,
Yeah.
And I was like, well, too bad. So that marriage was, I stayed clean for the rest of our marriage and raised the kids. I was like a Sunday school teacher. I'm like taking my kids to church. And meanwhile, my husband's doing meth, and was always gone. And basically like had all the control. I mean, he had the money. I didn't have family. I didn't have resources, and so one day he convinced me to use, and I didn't want to. I said no several times, but I still ended up doing it. Like he just put it right in my face. There was just this line in my face. And I look back now, and it was just because I was like desperately wanting to connect with him in some form, because it had just been such a chaotic and lonely marriage. And the next day I was like, I'm leaving. I'm not doing this again, And he told me, if you leave me, I will take the kids from you. And he knew that I couldn't hire a fancy attorney, or even a good attorney for that matter. And he had family to help him with his attorney. And so he took my kids from me. And I was absolutely devastated, because being a mom was like what I was created in life to be. I love being a mom. It's like it was my whole purpose in life, was loving my children and being the mom that I always wanted to be. And this was about 2008 this was like nearing 2008. So I had just lost my kids. And the thing that hurt the most was he didn't want them to raise them for himself, because he wasn't even an active father in our relationship. he wanted them because he didn't want me to have them. So as soon as he got custody of the children, because I couldn't pay for an attorney any longer, he handed them over to his mother to raise. And that broke me. I just spiraled. I just remember, like, I didn't want to be a weekend mom.
Yeah.
You know, and it was so hard because my kids would be crying, saying they didn't want to go back, and there was nothing I could do, like nothing I could do to help them. And I really wish that I could say I made different choices, but with the economy, crash, I ended up losing my job. So it was like another turn of events where, like, I just lost my kids and I'm trying to figure out how to navigate that when I didn't even deserve it, I'm losing my house. I lost my car. I only owed like $1,000 left on my car and I lost it. I could not find a job. At this point, I lived in Anderson, Indiana, and half the town was vacant overnight. The plants shut down. I mean, it was just so bad. And I started dabbling in meth again after that, like on the weeks when I didn't have my kids, because I just couldn't live with the pain. And I look back and I just really wish I would have made different choices. I wish that I would have went and talked to Christians, talked to someone. But I knew how to be a drug addict. Mm-hmm. I didn't know anything about recovery. I had no friends in recovery, and that's such an important thing for us to have, because we're able to, like, help each other. Yeah. And there's a lot of things you have to learn, So even though I was in recovery, with Jesus, at that point, I was angry a lot of me was angry at God because I lost my kids because I was poor. Yeah. And not because I deserved it, not because I was unfit. And then watching another woman raise your children when you desperately want them, that is very, very, very hard. Mm-hmm. And it was so hard. And so, I got remarried, and he was, of course, an addict because I had a type. Yeah. And at that point, you can only use a little bit before you get caught up in it again. Mm-hmm. And I went off the rails again, and my husband started, he was cooking meth kind of behind my back because he knew I didn't want any part of that. But before I knew it, I was full-blown addicted. And, it's funny when, like, you don't think that it can get worse, but, like, every time you go back out, it gets way worse. Yeah. It definitely does. Mm-hmm. And you start crossing lines that you swore you'd never cross. Mm-hmm. And then before you know it, they just became normal to me, Yeah. And I remember thinking, remember when I used to say I would never do this? And here I am, it's just totally normal. Like, I always promised myself I'd never shoot up. And at that point, I just really was like, I was a woman with nothing left to live for. And that is a very dangerous place in life to be. Yeah. I had my kids to live for, but I didn't have my kids how I wanted. Yeah. And I also didn't have, the resources to be, I didn't have any, I was homeless, mm-hmm. So I went off the rails again, and I, at that point, just nothing worked because I had Jesus in my heart. And it wasn't the same anymore. Yeah. So I just lived in this constant state of grief. Yeah. I cried every day, and nothing would take away my pain. And so I remember thinking, I used to be on fire for God, and I forgot what he feels like. Yeah. Like, I don't feel a spirit in me anymore, Ugh, it makes me cry.
That's a horrible feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm going to start using heroin because I know that'll numb me, Yeah. So at that point, I'm literally I can't even describe how low I was. I mean, I was, eating at soup kitchens, covered in track marks, bruises. I had an insane meth addiction, insane heroin addiction. Life is chaotic. My husband, we were once madly in love, and I watched him replace his love for me for his meth lab. And that was a hard thing to go through. And, when you're living in that world, there's just a lot of toxic stuff that happens.
Yeah.
A lot.
Ton of it.
Yes. Yes. So one day I was like, you know what, Marissa, what's the point in living? I wish that I could say I got clean for my kids because I wanted to. It's just that people don't understand, you first have to find a place where you could go detox.
Yeah.
You can't just get off dope and start working the next day. That's not going to happen. I mean, and I didn't have anybody except for people who did dope. And so I remember I was like, I'm just going to get clean. I'm going to try. And my husband left to go cook some dope, and I grabbed him by his leg, and I'm like, if you leave me I am not in a good place right now. You cannot leave me alone. And he just stepped over me. And I was like, okay, no one's coming to save you. So you're going to have to figure this out. So I grabbed a phone book with a red pen, and I didn't know anything about recovery, so I just started calling treatment facilities. But, it was the same thing. Well, do you have money? No. Yeah. Do you have insurance? No. I'm homeless. I don't have anything. Do you have family that can pay for it? I'm like, no. So it was no, no, no. And I just kept taking this red pen and crossing out the numbers, And I got to the last one, and I knew after that phone call that I was going to end my life. So I waited a few days until I did, because I knew it was going to be a no. And it was. And I'll never forget just grabbing that phone book, and I was so desperate. And I just fell to my knees, and I was wailing and just sobbing, and I cried out to God, and I'm like, God, you have to save me. You have to rescue me. I cannot live like this anymore. Just let me go home and be with you, And so I went in the bathroom, and I shot up a bunch of heroin, a lot. I wanted to make sure that it worked. And I lived, and I remember waking up, and I was angry. It was the only emotion I had was anger, rage, rage. Just let me be. I don't want to live anymore like this. Because it was just a terrible way to live, And it's no matter how much dope you get, it's never enough. You always need more, you always, whatever. And so I did the same thing. I went back in the bathroom and tried to end my life again. And I was revived. And I was angry. But at that point, I was physically exhausted, and I just didn't have the energy. So I gave up for a minute. And 3 days later, at 39 years old, I was arrested with multiple charges. And I knew that God answered my prayer.
Because you were going to jail.
Yep.
How much time were you looking at on that?
38 years.
All right, let's hear it. So how much time did you end up doing?
10 months.
10 months. So when you got out, how was life? Was life any different?
Very different. Yeah.
What changed?
So when I was in jail, I dedicated my life to God. I just was like, I waited. When I was done with my withdrawals, I fell to my knees and I'm like, Lord, I gave you my heart a long time ago, but I'm surrendering my entire life to you because you have my attention now. Everything in my life has been stripped. Like everything I've ever loved is gone. And so whatever happens, if I go to prison, if I get out, I will serve you for the rest of my life. And God gave me a scripture in there from Joel promising to restore the years that the locusts had eaten. And I was like, that's impossible. You know, I remember thinking that. It's impossible. But it gave me hope. And so I had to go in front of 2 judges because I was also on probation for felonies. So I knew I was going to prison because you can't catch a bunch of felonies and you're already on probation for a felony.
Yeah.
But when I was in jail, there was this pastor that came in, and he used to be an inmate there. And I didn't know this, but he was dying from cancer at the time. But he came in and he said, God wants you to be on my leadership team. And I'm like, me? Like, I mean, I had a black eye, a shattered hand. I got into a big fight in jail. Like, I was a mess, okay? And I'm like, you got the wrong girl. And he's like, no. And he taught me that I was a leader. I never saw that. Nobody ever told me that.
Isn't that one of the first times that somebody had actually looked at you too and been like, hey, like I see you.
Yes.
Like through all of this mess, like of course, like in relationships, like that in that world, it's a give and take. You know, it's an exchange. A relationship is an exchange. So he's like one of the first people that kind of was like, hey,
yes,
I see you.
And when I got into the fight, I mean, it was really bad. It's embarrassing, but like they had to evacuate all these blocks from all the pepper spray they used on me. And so it was like this big ordeal, right? And I just knew that he would kick me off the leadership team because I'm like, I'm definitely getting kicked off this leadership team. And he didn't. And he was like, no, instead I'm going to have you talk this weekend at church about forgiveness. And I was like, awesome. Great. I'll do that then. And so it was like at that moment where he really made me feel like I was somebody.
Yeah.
An inmate with a black eye and a cast on her hand, you know?
Yeah.
Looking at all these felonies. And so I went in front of the judge. I wrote the judge a letter, and he gave me time served because I couldn't make bail. I was too poor. Nobody would bail me out.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing, 10 months. And so when I went in front of the second judge, she court ordered me to a program. And she had just started this, treatment courts weren't really a big thing yet in 2012 when I got arrested. But they were just starting. And so by the grace of God, I went in front of, a judge in Allen County where they had just started problem-solving courts. And I was placed on hope probation and sentenced to a transitional house, and I just changed my entire life.
So if you didn't complete that, you were you were probably looking at a lot of time, huh?
Yeah, I was definitely going to go. If I didn't complete that, I was looking at 3 years.
So a little motivation there too, right?
Yes, it was. Also, I wanted to be. Actually, when I was in jail, or when I was getting sentenced, I was in court, and I remember when the judge said, "I'm going to help you. I'm going to send you to a recovery home." And I flashed back 10 months prior to that when I was on my knees with that phone book and couldn't get any help. And here I am standing in front of a felony judge in a felony courtroom getting the help I needed. Mm-hmm. And yes, that was very motivational. They called me Recovery Barbie in my program because I was just ready, and I'd surrendered. And all I wanted was my kids back. My kids were living in southern Indiana. And really, I thought, okay, if I could just get my kids back, get a job, get my own place. That's all I want. A car would be cool, that would be helpful. And so I ended up moving out and getting, my first little apartment. It was this little tiny studio, and I had nothing. I owned nothing. But God just provided for me the whole time. And I ended up one day driving to Southern Indiana because my ex-husband was still in active addiction the whole time.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't let me see the kids. And I just went, and my son was going to the Army at that point. He was finishing high school, and I went and picked up my daughter. And it was very courageous of me to do, because I allowed him to control me for so long, and I allowed fear. I was driven by fear a lot. But I brought my daughter home and got her back. And when my son got home from boot camp, he came to live with me. And I just remember thinking, wow, like, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm not only clean, but I started learning about like recovery and not just staying clean and replacing all that bad stuff with good stuff. Building a life that's just too valuable to give up on.
So you went and snatched the kids back up, huh?
Yes.
They were old enough at that point to make the decision, probably, right?
Yes, they were.
Because if he was going into the military. So if you're listening, times have changed a little bit. So if you are looking to get into inpatient treatment and you don't have insurance or you're homeless, now if you call 3 or 4 places, you're going to find one that will do a preemptive. They will admit you, come pick you up, a lot of them, and take care of the insurance for you. It wasn't always like that. So if you are feeling hopeless and you hear the story, know that you can. You probably make 2 calls and you'll find a place that will take you. They'll help you get the insurance. A lot of places will actually help you detox, depending on what you're on. Alcohol, benzos are a little bit different, or MATs if you're trying to transition out of that. But you can, so just know that if you're struggling now and you call, that it's changed so much over the last 7, 8, 10 years. There are a lot of places that they'll take you and they'll get you a ride and they'll help you with the insurance. Before, it was like they wanted private insurance. It was tough to get. Everything was different. But I did want to make sure that I made a point of that. If you're listening, it's a lot easier now. If you're trying to get inpatient, outpatient, detox, any of that stuff, those places will help you because they want your business too, right? So they're going to help you get insurance. And if you're homeless, you can definitely qualify. If you're in Indiana, you'll get approved, and they will go back. You'll be covered once you get approved for everything that they started on when you started. So that's kind of how that works. Sorry, I wanted to make sure that they know that, because we have a lot of people reach out there. We don't have insurance, so you don't have to have insurance. We'll get it figured out most of the time. Yeah. Yeah,
I love what's happened in the recent years because I did desperately want it, and I could have gotten help a lot sooner. Mm-hmm. If it was available to me. And so I love that it's just amazing to see what's available now. Yeah. Even just being able to find someone that will, just being able to know that you can get a ride. Mm-hmm. They're going to come pick you up,
All of that. Mm-hmm. And that gives you 28 days to figure some of the other stuff out. Yeah. They're not up against it. Yeah. And so if you know somebody that needs help, we complicate this stuff. Now, when I'm in active addiction, I'm complicating it on purpose, because when I tell you I want to get help, I don't really want to get help. Not saying that's the case with everybody all the time, but what I do is I'm like, I don't have insurance. I can't get into anywhere. And you're like, oh, no, that's fine. You don't have insurance. We can get you into somewhere. Because that's what I tell people all the time. Like if somebody got a hold of me and they're like, hey, you need to get help, I'd be like, well, I've got to take care of some stuff first. Oh, yeah. When I've been spending years not taking care of anything, and then all of a sudden I have affairs to take care of. I have things to tend to.
I hear that daily, yes.
Yeah. But just know, if you truly, genuinely want help, it is available in so many ways, shapes, and form now. There's AA, NA groups everywhere. All, you know, a lot of churches have the faith-based stuff, inpatient treatment. You can get in without insurance. You can get in if you have insurance, like all of that.
Yes.
And outpatient services.
Yeah.
You can get those, and you can get into groups. You can get into therapy. You can do all of that stuff.
Transitional living.
Transitional housing. If you're in jail, have your attorney reach out on the problem-solving courts, because they have those a lot of places now. I work with one of them, you know what I mean, or 3 of them.
Yes.
So there's a lot of things that have happened that have changed. There's a lot less excuses if you're really trying to get help, because, like we said, they'll come pick you up and take off with you and help you get your insurance and all that stuff. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to.
No, I'm glad, because I want you to say all this. It's important that people know that.
Yeah. Well, and you're doing transitional living now too, pretty much, right?
Yes, that's what we're doing.
How did we start the Hearten House? How did that start?
So after I graduated my program, I ended up working at the program I was at, and I worked there for 5 years, and a gal reached out to me and said, you know, we're trying to open up a place in Auburn. There's really no place for women that are in need. And so I went and applied. And I remember I turned around a couple times, because I'm like, I'm not going to get this job. I'm a felon, you know. But God was like, no, I want you to go. You're going to go, you know. And I was like, dang it. You know, I was so scared, because I don't handle rejection that well. Because it takes me a lot of times. I've had to learn how to handle it in a healthy manner, because it's part of life and it's okay. But
a lot of your past has a lot to do with not wanting to be rejected. It's better to not take the shot, right, than to feel that way again sometimes. That's how it seems.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I ended up, they offered me the position. So I opened up Hearten House and developed the program, and we started with barely anything, really. And it's just been amazing the last 7 years, watching what God has done within the organization, and just all the lives that have changed. Just so many lives, and the kids who get their moms back, you know. I also serve on Family Restoration Court in DeKalb County, and just being able to be the advocate, being the person that I needed for everyone else, is probably one of the biggest rewards, you know. I know what it feels like to not have those resources and to just want someone to love you.
Yeah.
And so I get to be that.
So you cried out to God with the phone book, right? And then you tried to maybe intentionally OD twice.
Yes.
And then you ended up in jail. You got into a fight.
Yes.
And then the chaplain put you on his leadership team.
Yes.
And then, so this time, I think sometimes, so you said that, you allowed Jesus into your heart, but then, that's different than laying my life at his feet.
Yes.
Isn't it? So,
Yes.
the transition for you happened, Christ was in there. Probably because some people answered a door in what looked like a chaotic situation. There was a slight introduction to Christ. Then, you had the 4 years, and you're like, okay, Christ, I want you in my life. And then it's like, okay, God, I can't take this anymore. I'm laying my life at your feet, and the true submission, to find the freedom that we talk about a lot of times on here. You find the freedom in laying your life down at his feet. You have to lose your life to gain life, and it doesn't make sense. Reading that, RJ, it doesn't really make sense if you're reading it from a third party, it's silly, right?
Right.
until you experience it. And it's like, oh, that's what it means. Like, lay down my life, and then like I receive this life. I have to give. In order, like, to give is to gain. To lose is to gain. Like, all of these things that don't make sense until, like, you're walking in this freedom and in this light, and then you look back and you're like, I did everything I did everything I wanted to do, and I was miserable. There was nothing off limits for me. I got to my point there was nothing off limits to me. I could do anything I wanted to do.
Yes.
I could take anything I wanted to take. I'll do whatever I wanted to do, and I was miserable.
Yes.
I look back, and the more I took, the more I gained, the more I acquired, the more miserable I was.
Yes.
And then boom, like, you get to that place, and it's like, God, you take it all.
Yes. Like, all of it. I don't have 1 ounce left to fight God anymore with. Like, I'm surrendering it all. Do with me as you will. Pastor
Mike always says you can't box with God because his arms are too long. You're going to lose. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's a powerful testimony of, like, you see a lot of people that have these encounters with God, however they look. Sometimes it's sometimes it's like these little quiet moments. We have these encounters with God, and then they come out of the fire on fire.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, so, like, why are you doing all of this? Well, I don't really know. But I don't know how to not. You know what I mean? Like in my life, so all I know is, like, I'm just I'm just doing the stuff.
Yes.
You seem really busy. Well, but I'm just doing the stuff. Like you seem really busy, right?
Yes.
But extremely busy at times.
I am. Yes.
Yeah. Do you feel like resting is hard for you?
I have learned how to make it a priority because God didn't ask me to serve him and work myself to death.
Yeah.
But it was definitely impossible for me to do in the beginning of the first 3 or 4 years
to rest
of recovery. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the first advice I give people now is, like, you have to learn how to rest.
Yes.
Because I was like, I think I've had, like, not really necessarily mental breakdowns, but I just was so out. And then it was like, God wasn't asking me to do, he wasn't asking me to go to 100 miles per hour nonstop for 5 years.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Because I think something happened. It's like, you're just, like you said, it's like you're on fire for God, and you're like, I just want to help everybody. I just want to serve him and get, the life that I've always dreamt of and help other people find it. But I remind myself, Marissa, you didn't go into recovery just to work yourself to death, So balance is very important.
And he hasn't always called us, like, we feel like we're supposed to, like, we get to a place sometimes where it's like, I've got to save everybody. And it's like, I can't save anybody.
Yes.
And it's like the end of Schindler's List when he's, like, pulling all this stuff. I could have saved 5 more. It's like,
yes.
But you can't be like that. I was having a conversation the other day, like, we're planting seeds. You know what I mean? And, like, trying to go back and rescue everybody. You have to use discernment and really be praying, because some people are only taking up your time and energy. And it's not to discount those people, but you weren't called to those people. You know what I mean? And while you're working on that, which can be very time consuming, there may be 3 people over here that just needed one phone call. So you have to use discernment.
Yes, you do.
Because when I first got saved, I was like, I got to help everybody. So I saw somebody walking.
Yes.
I'm emptying my pockets, I'm making it rain, like whatever I can do. Where do you need a ride? But I wasn't, and you should do that stuff, within reason. But, you find yourself, like, I'm off path now because I've went all these different directions, and these people didn't even,
yes.
They didn't even want help. And I'm out here just,
I know.
Doing the most.
I had to learn, you can't help someone more than they're willing to help themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you do have to understand that I can't help everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to be okay with that.
Yeah. Especially sometimes the people close to you, because I think that's the hardest ones. It's like, I can't, I've cried out to God before, like, okay, this doesn't seem fair. Like, this is what I do. But then, like, why can't I pull a couple favors and get these people on board, but they have free will.
Very true.
You know what I mean? And I'm not a magician out here, and I don't have any magic. I just have resources in Jesus. It's not for me. You know what I mean?
Right.
I can't impose I don't have any power outside of him to impose on anybody.
Yes.
You know, I can give you I can talk you to death and give you a headache, but that's not, you know what I mean? Not the best way to do it, really. So, all right. Well, is there anything else you would like to tell us about your programming or anything like that, or any direction you would like to send us?
Well, I do want to say that, God redeemed my relationship with my children, and I get to be for my kids what I never got from my biological parents. And, it's been this, I've recently made a decision to cut my mom out of my life.
Yeah.
And it's been a really painful journey, but it gave me, I'm just not going to be silenced anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to, if someone can't, acknowledge some of the pain that they're causing or whatever, or have a relationship that's worth having, then I'm just not going to do that anymore. And I'm not going to make up excuses. And so, my kids talk about how watching me and where I came from has really inspired them. My daughter said that she believes in God because of what he's done in my life. And my son told me, it's impossible for me not to forgive you. And I'm like, that's Jesus.
Yeah.
That's totally Jesus. I did my part and he did his. And so I have the tremendous honor of being a mom and a grandma today. And I also have the tremendous honor of leading a lot of people who are feeling hopeless and planting those seeds and leading them to Christ, whether they get the recovery right or not in the beginning, because, it's a journey.
Yeah.
To me, giving your heart to Christ is where lasting recovery comes in anyway. That's my personal belief. I respect everybody's journey.
Yeah.
But I would say if someone's struggling and they want to, come to our program, or they just need resources, call us, because we will give them as many resources as they need.
The Hearten House. Can we put that on the screen or anything, RJ?
Yes, sir.
I love RJ. I'm this dude's biggest headache, I promise.
No, you're not. You're fine.
I'm not his biggest headache, but I'm a mild migraine. Yes, I love the restoration stories with families, because that's my personal story too. Things seem impossible. It's like, it's never going to happen. You know what I mean? You just are like, I'm going to be every other weekend, that's just going to be what it is. But sometimes God has other plans. And another thing that is very important for people to hear is you can forgive without reconnecting. You don't get those two twisted up. You can forgive. I can forgive somebody for what they've done. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are granted access back to my life. I can love you, forgive you, and pray for you from a distance. And that's something you want to use discernment on, because sometimes we feel like forgiveness doesn't take us back to where we were before. You know what I mean? And reconnect us, or give us the same titles, or give us the same relationship. Sometimes forgiveness is, I forgive you for the way you hurt me, even if you're not asking me to. But that doesn't necessarily grant you access back to my life. And that's something that's discernment too. But, not every time that we forgive doesn't mean that we have to reconnect or allow people back into our lives. But it does mean you do have to forgive. At some point, you've got to figure out that forgiveness thing for your own spiritual walk. But it's just what we're called to do. A lot of people say, if you forgive, it's for you. And it might be, but the reason we forgive is because Christ forgave us.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that you have to go back into unhealthy places, that you have to put yourself in harm's way. You don't have to do any of that to forgive, love, and pray for. You can do that from a safe and healthy distance. So remember that as well, because I think sometimes we get that mixed up. If you got out of something toxic, you can forgive it, love it, pray for it from a distance, and you don't have to go back to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really important topic because, the people that I work with in early recovery, that's oftentimes what they believe is that forgiveness is also reconciliation. And that is not true. I think, one of the most dangerous things I believed in life was that saying blood is thicker than water, and I remember it was like I realized, well, serial killers have families too. It doesn't mean that they're supposed to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I thought that was like what I was supposed to do. And it's important because I just won't let anybody steal my peace.
Yeah.
No one's going to take my peace from me.
Right.
I work too hard to find it. And not forgiveness. It's really important that people know what forgiveness is, and it doesn't always mean reconciliation. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Well, we do see it a lot. And it's like, I forgive him doesn't mean you got to get back with him. You know what I mean?
Yes. Or
especially with parents and family. It's like you can forgive. And I'm not telling you one way or the other. This is something you need to seek wise counsel about and pray about. But because it can go either way. But it does, just because that person's your brother or your sister, you can forgive them. It doesn't necessarily mean you got to let them back into your life, especially if they're a danger to you or the kids around you and you already know this. That's just me speaking, but you don't always, it's hard when it's family or somebody you care about or ex-boyfriend or girlfriend or something like that. But it doesn't always mean that you go back to what you were to forgive. Right.
Exactly. I mean, I see it all the time, especially it's like, well, that's my parents. And I'm like, well, both of my biological parents, I mean, my biological father went to prison for horrendous crimes against children. And like, and even if he didn't, like, I mean, if I'm not going to let people in my life that are going to steal what I have today because I worked too hard to find it.
And that are possible threats, like still, outside, if they weren't in prison, you know what I mean? You don't really want them around.
No, not at all.
So what is the last worship song that you've intentionally listened to?
You know what? I just recently discovered On My Knees by Red Clay Strays.
I don't think I've heard that. I've heard some of their stuff, but
I just discovered them on accident. And I mean, I love jamming to worship music, but like this song it makes me so happy. And it makes me dance in my house when I'm by myself.
That's good when you can dance by yourself in the house. Yeah. I've been on, oh gosh, I can't even think of it. My friend Devin sent it to me. And anyway, it's Benjamin William Hastings. And what I'm finding about him is I just like the dude. But I can't remember what he sent me, but it was a cover. And the more I listen to this guy, especially his live stuff, he's phenomenal. He's been around forever, but I saw him when we went to see Brandon Lake. He was with him, and he sings the song Abandon, which I love. But there was another one that my friend Devin just sent me. I can't think of it, but I listened to that for a few days straight. That's what I do. If I find something I like, I listen to it. RJ, he can sing.
I don't know about that.
He's phenomenal. But he doesn't really listen to worship music because he's always, at church and stuff.
Yep.
So
Benjamin William Hastings was just at Taylor and led worship like 3 weeks ago.
Why did you not give me tickets?
It was at chapel, man.
I can get to chapel.
I didn't know.
Can I? Is it an open chapel?
Yeah, I'll tell you next time.
Oh,
sorry,
dude. I want to see him so bad solo.
Yeah, it was cool.
I saw him in Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
He was with Brandon Lake. Brandon Lake I like, but I'd like to see him. Let me know next time, man.
He did good. It was good.
I bet he did. He's phenomenal. And I missed out. Okay. Well, now we know, RJ, for the future. I'm going to tell you, it's going to take me a couple minutes to get over that. No, I'm just... I'm just playing.
He's in his feelings.
Yeah, I'm just playing. Listen, at the end of the day, like, you can worship with, you know what I mean, your neighbors, and it's phenomenal because it's about praising God. So.
Yes, absolutely.
But I do like him. The red clay strays. I'm gonna have to listen to that. So, well, it's been awesome having you on.
Yes.
Thank you for being so open and sharing your story, and being so transparent. That was a lot. That was a lot of walking through there. A lot to walk through and kind of cut through. That's more than I knew about. So there was more in there than I. Yeah, I mean, in our conversations, it was like I knew some of that stuff happened, but I wasn't. So, but the good news is, at the end of the day, you call out to God, you see what happens. And if you've already called out to God, pay attention to the people around you and your heart posture, and how you're responding to people. I think that's one of the things that maybe it's just the season I'm in but like, you know what I mean, just paying attention to the people around you and really praying and being there for people.
Yeah.
Can mean the world to them. Showing up is such a big deal. You know what I mean? Such a big deal. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, thanks for having me on. I absolutely love what you do. I love all the work that you do, and I appreciate it.
So we thank you all for listening. And again, if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or followed us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please do, and share it with a friend. If you think, you know, we have a lot of stories and testimonies. If you think there's somebody that it might be helpful to, please share it and give us a review if you wouldn't mind. Go check out the Hearten House Facebook page, heartenhouse.org, if you have any questions or you would like to donate or anything like that. We want to thank Delivered Media, as always. That's our production people. This stuff doesn't happen without this team. You can reach out to them on Facebook as well and get all of the, get connected to them however you want. Thank you to Los Amores. Those are our people. We already told you, go in there and get some steak stuff. Steak quesadilla. That's probably what I'm going to get on my meal there this week. So you all make sure you're paying attention. Make sure you're praying. And if you see somebody that needs something, especially just somebody to talk to, just talk. Open up your time a little bit and tithe with that this week. So we thank you all for listening. We appreciate everybody's support, and we cannot wait to see you next Wednesday on Escaping the Chains podcast.